Oh boy, we definitely need a new intro video for sure. Welcome to Regular Podcast.
Get on it, Joe. Get on it, man.
Well, it used to be StreamYard used to have a pretty cool opening. Like it'd be like, it was not like something to brag home about, but usually you'd be like, okay, like because I just switched StreamYard, so like the one that I had on there isn't on this one, so I had to kind of like go within. People on the podcast, they're gonna be like, what the hell was that? Well, that was like elevator music because we're gonna go off on a ride with the Red Wings because they're hot right now. Um, they're 9-1-2 in their last 12 games. That's pretty good. They since we last talked, obviously we'll talk about the Four Nations tournament and all that jazz. But the Red Wings since we talked, they won 3-2 against the Wild yesterday. Won 5-4 against the Ducks on Sunday night, but they lost Saturday 4-3, which is a game they should have won. And my dad got a little bit pissed off at the end because them blowing the lead. So that was fun. But this week we got a couple of heavy hitting games. Columbus back to back, and one is at the Stadium Series, so it's going to be at Ohio Stadium, which is Ohio State's football field for people that are not football fans, which is a very unique place for both of these states, Ohio and Michigan, because obviously Michigan and Ohio State. So that's going to be fun to watch at the Horseshoe. So it's going to be fun because usually the team in Columbus wears red and they're wearing blue, and the team that usually wears blue in Michigan, they're wearing red. It's a quite reversal of teams.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of an adjustment in the mind to say, okay, who am I looking at? Right? What's going
Yeah,
on?
yeah. People are going to be like, wait, which team am I rooting for again?
Yeah, right.
You're at Ohio.
Exactly.
You're at Ohio Stadium, and you're just like, okay. Usually I cheer for the red team. This time I'm cheering for the blue team.
Yeah,
Do I dare say go blue? No, I don't
no,
think.
don't
I don't
say
think
that. As a Spartan, I can unequivocally say, don't say go blue. I am not in support of that position. But in this case, I might have to be. But it's like, yeah, right. It's like every time you think blue, you think that's the opponent, right? It's like
yeah. So
Toronto, it's
yeah.
Columbus,
Well, no,
it's
I mean Ohio
St.
State.
Louis.
If you're in Ohio State Stadium and they think that like blue is Michigan, which it is Michigan, but it's the Red Wings, and then for the Blue Jackets, they're blue and they're playing the red team, which is a quite reversal of what Ohio State Michigan is.
Gotcha. Yes, yes. So, yeah, it's gonna be it's weird. But anyway,
Very
enough of
weird.
that. Enough of that. We were having a pretty good conversation actually pre-show. I thought was pretty good about. There's a lot of talk, obviously, about potential trades that are coming.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that could happen. I'll tell you the one I got excited about, and I actually texted you, right? And I said, "Hey, what do you hear about this Tkachuk thing?" I hadn't heard anything about Tkachuk, but boy, was I excited about the prospect of getting him and get another grinder on the line, right? And you're like, "Yeah, I don't think it's happening." So I was like, "Darn it! I knew. I thought I had a dream
We,
last night. That must have been it."
okay, off the Four Nations tournament, which was a great hockey tournament, which I thought was fantastic for the game. We know that the Canadians could get a little bit sensitive with some of the things that people say, especially
No, really?
especially especially our president calling the Canada the 51st state. I mean, it just is what it is. They get offensive, but I know the Canadian media loves to play narratives, and they were playing a narrative of, oh, should we trade Brady Kachuk while his value is the highest it's ever been? No, you shouldn't trade Brady Kachuk. And you're the Ottawa Senators. You're not the Maple Leafs, and you're not the Canadians. So you need someone to bring the butts into those seats. And the Senators have a if you everyone that goes to Ottawa says it's the worst arena in the NHL.
Yeah.
I you keep hearing it from like people like with the player survey and everything that Ottawa does have the worst arena in the game, and actually the Red Wings place first in having the best arena for opposing teams. Like the opposing teams love coming to Detroit because of the the room that they have in their locker room, and all that jazz. And when you have the Pistons in the same facility, I mean, obviously you're gonna get the best of the best from both owners. They're gonna put the best things forward. But yeah, Ottawa, that whole Brady Kachuk thing was I when you said that, I went and searched on the X or Twitter, whatever it's called now,
Yeah.
and Yeah, it was just people throwing sticks at a wall, and I was like, "Pff, if I could get Brady Kachuk, I'll do it tomorrow." Like,
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I couldn't validate any of that either, but that's why I said it must just been, one of these dreams I was having, and I woke up and realized that ain't happening. But there are a couple of potential trades that might happen, and we were talking about that pre-show, and one of the potential trade targets for Detroit, it would seem, is Jordan Binnington. And
Mhm.
I think that's an interesting conversation to have because I definitely see where they were looking to move Huso. I knew they
Yeah.
were going to move Huso, open up some cap space. Talbot and Lyon have been performing very well. Therefore, and Huso not so much. So I can see them getting rid of that. But I have to tell you, Joe, I'm a little perplexed about what the play would be in bringing in Jordan Binnington. So, I mean, I actually really like Binnington. I always have been a fan of his. But what do you think the Wings are thinking with bringing in a third goaltender, and then who's going to go?
That's the interesting part. Who's going to go? Because you mentioned this just now, and this is from Sportsnet today. Kiprios and Bourne, they said Binnington would be the focus of the goalie market, and we shouldn't underestimate the interest level in him. Edmonton, Carolina, and Detroit have in him, and when you look at that, just right away, you say, okay, well, I mean, I put Braden Shen in that graphic too because if this is where it's going to go along the lines of if you're gonna go with St. Louis, and we know that Steve Yzerman has had a connection to St. Louis with Armstrong, the general manager. He's traded for Huso, he's traded for Wallman, he's traded for Sundqvist. He's made some trades with Armstrong, and I think it goes along the lines of whenever you go buy a car, you always like want to go buy a car with a person that you trust to do a deal with. And I think that Steve Yzerman would love to do a deal with a guy he trusts. And obviously, him doing a couple trades with the guy means he trusts him in what he thinks. And that he's not a shyster. He's not gonna be a loose lips. He's not gonna leak a trade to the media and then try to market up interest
Yeah,
in the player.
capitalize on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's just some of the things that Steve Yzerman doesn't want to do. Is he doesn't want to do business with bad people. And I think him going with Pat Verbeek and doing the whole future considerations thing, that was kind of like I'll work with you as well. And that's someone that, there's someone on that team that could be a potential guy that you could add to this team too. You don't know. The Red Wings got $14 million in cap space right now. And it's going to be interesting to see what the Detroit Red Wings would have to give up because there's a lot of players that are mentioned in Detroit. I said yesterday on a YouTube video that I did, these are two players that are routinely linked to the Detroit Red Wings, and it's Elias Pettersson from Vancouver, which I'm not really a big fan of, and Dylan Cousins, who is 23 from the Buffalo Sabres. And I say though to this, Cindy, like I said on the video yesterday, it seems like every time a Buffalo Sabre gets traded, they become a superstar. So I would totally be for Dylan Cousins
Yeah.
because Sam Reinhart goes from Buffalo to Florida. No one thinks anything of it, and he becomes like a 40-goal scorer. Ryan O'Reilly goes from Buffalo, he becomes a stud. Like I mean, it's just like Buffalo, like they crank out these players that like they don't even know how to capitalize on. So it's just and I'm not big on Elias Pettersson for a couple of reasons. One, that cap hit is ridiculous at $11.6 million, and
Yeah, that's insane.
you can see that he's only got 11 goals this year. When you score as many goals as you have millions of dollars at this point in the season, yeah, I think that's a little bit of a thing that I'm gonna kind of chastise you on. And the Canucks I think they traded the wrong player in JT Miller. They should never got rid of JT Miller. I think too much of JT Miller, but JT Miller is also a red ass and he could really piss people off. But sometimes you need a red ass, and they're kind of like the Red Wings have with we hear Patrick Kane could be kind of like he doesn't seem like he's vocal, but there's people that say he's really vocal in the locker room, and that's a veteran leader right there. And when you have veteran leaders that are like, look, I'm not going to sit here and just let this go by. I'm going to call you out for it, and people get offended, Elias Pettersson. Then you're not really a guy that I really want, and I'm pretty sure that Todd McLennan wouldn't really jive well with a guy like Elias Pettersson, who seems like he takes stuff a little too offensive, to be honest.
Well, and I don't think that Steve Yzerman is going to put up with paying $1 million per goal. That's not going to happen. That's a little rich for even Stevie's blood, right? And he's not going to do that. So
name me an owner that or a GM that would.
Right, exactly. So so I don't see that happening. But one of the concerns that I've got, we bring Binnington here. I'm going to be excited about that. But I got to tell you, the Talbot Lyon tandem is working. Working. I don't see Todd McLellan making any changes to what's working. I think he's the kind of guy that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So, but Binnington does open up and provide an awesome opportunity to pick up just an A1 goaltender. I mean, really exceptional. So I would think that maybe they'll just move one of the other guys maybe down to GR, just in the case that they got to bring somebody up, somebody gets hurt. And speaking of, getting hurt, well, a couple other things first too. You mentioned that, Columbus, they get rid of all these guys, or excuse me, Buffalo, get rid of all these guys and they become superstars. But, that's just evidence of the fact that sometimes you just have to get the right guy in the right place. And there's a lot of other factors that affect performance other than just the individual player and what's going on with them. They got to have
it's kind of an organizational issue when you look at it. Like if I was a Buffalo Sabres podcaster right now, I'd probably be tearing my hair out. Seeing a guy like Sam Reinhart score 40 goals in the NHL, seeing a guy like Tage Thompson, who is a hell of a Tage Thompson's a hell of a player, he can't get nowhere. And then I don't know if you saw it, Cindy. There was a time where Tage Thompson got his knee taken out by a opposing player, and no one wanted to fight for him. Like there was this guy skating around, like, dude, if that's like your best player, you go out and you start wailing on people. Like, just who cares? Like, don't care.
Like, you're not going to do that to our guy. And they let him.
I don't care. I don't care about the penalty that you get. It's about sending a message that you're not going to take being a pushover. And the Buffalo Sabres, I just look at them. They've been in the bottom of the league for 10, 11, 12 years. I mean, we're getting kind of, we're sitting in our chairs right now going, oh, we got to make the playoffs for the Red Wings. And for the Buffalo Sabres, they've been routinely at the bottom of the league. I can't imagine what a Buffalo Sabres fan is thinking right now. So,
well, here's their problem. It's very simple. It's a simple answer. It's not a mystery. And here in Detroit, we've seen that same scenario play out. The fact is that it's culture. It's a culture problem. That's what they got. They have a systemic organizational culture problem over there. Not to mention the fact that because there's a culture problem, there's probably also operational things that aren't working well either. And nobody's got the balls to stand up and fix it. God bless Sheila Hamp. She came in, she finally got her shot after years and years of lobbying to run the Lions. She gets her shot finally, and she did not take that for granted. She went ahead and she immediately changed that culture. She brought in a team that supported the culture. They're all on the same page, and you see miracles happen. So that's what has to happen in organizations like that, where they have just, long-term sustained losses. You got to eventually look at it and go, is it me? I mean, it's got to be something with us. So, and I think that the best thing Steve Yzerman's done for the Red Wings in terms of the changing of the culture is finally getting in a head coach that has the culture, Todd McLellan. Todd McLellan is a game changer in the ultimate way. I mean, I know everybody knows this because they're looking at the results of it. But what I'm saying is that finally Steve Yzerman got the right guy in the right place. And I think Todd McLellan feels like he's the right man at the right time in the right place with the right team also. But my concern, back to my concern about, okay, if you were to make a Binnington trade happen, I think you can say you're absolutely short up in net. That's good. But one of the other things that happened this week, Joe, that we really need to talk about, we talked about this pre-show, it's got me concerned, and I think you're concerned as well. And that is the injury to Andrew Kopp and the fact that he is now out for the season.
Hmm.
because when you're looking at these last few games and you're looking at um, what is happening, either the Red Wings are blowing leads, but they're coming back at the last 11th hour, thanks to people like Patrick Kane, the pressure player who can come in there and either throw an equalizer in there to give them some kind of momentum, or hope to win it, or they're coming in and they're scoring those overtime goals, they're scoring those winning goals. The fact of the matter is, you're having to put up a lot of offense right now because your defense is a little thin. Simon Edvinsson and Mo Seider have been great, but you're thin on defense, so you're having to put up a lot of offense. And Copp is the kind of guy that I think a lot of people think, oh, no big deal. We lost Copp. I'll be honest with you. When I was like, oh, shoot, he's out for the season, I was thinking, well, it could be worse. I mean, if I had to pick anybody, maybe that'd be the guy I'd pick. But you know what? The reality is, guys like Copp quietly doing their job, sometimes you don't realize the loss until they're not there. And so I know you talked about possibly bringing in Schenn to help shore up some of that, but I have concerns about the forward group now. One, you lost a guy that it was working inside of a system, and now you got to find another guy who can work as well in the system that they've developed that's working. But secondly, what if you get another injury? What if you get another injury into that forward group that you're relying so much on the offense for? What are your thoughts,
Well,
Joe?
I mean, well, let's be honest. I dealt with enough injuries as a Lions guy this year, so I'm not really trying to continue that with the Red Wings. But yeah, this is definitely something that you should be looking at. Like, it's another injury could really make things dicey. You know what I'm saying? And it depends who it is. And for everyone that says Andrew Copp is not this great player, or whatever the case may be, he's one of your top 5 goal scorers right now. There's a lot of people, they kind of they don't see that. They see Patrick Kane score goals, and they see Alex DeBrincat score goals, and they're seeing Edvinsson score 2 goals yesterday, and Larkin and all that jazz. But Copp has been consistent, and him not being in a lineup, I mean, it's a huge deal. It really is. Like, if we're gonna talk about what Andrew Copp brings to the team, well, there's 2 things that he brings to the team that I think are very, very something to be, something to be told is in that NHL player survey, you know who the number 1 player on the Detroit Red Wings was that could become an NHL coach was?
Andrew Copp.
Andrew Copp.
Yeah.
And Justin Hall. And Justin Hall was number 2, I believe, but Andrew Copp was number 1. And there's a reason that, Stevie Y brought this guy in here. Stevie Y didn't bring Andrew Copp in here because he thought he was like a 40-goal scorer. He brought in Andrew Copp because he's a captain material, and he could lead a room if he has to, and he's good out there on the ice because you know what to expect out of him. And for a couple, the last couple years, a lot of people were kind of like railing on Andrew Copp and saying that he's not a great player. But I mean, look at the system he played in. I mean, just look at what he's doing with Todd McLennan. Todd McLennan has really came in, and a lot of these players, Berggren, Johansson, Edvinsson, they've turned around since McLennan's been here. And it's like you said earlier about the Buffalo Sabres and the players that they get traded from the Sabres become stars. And you said that's an organizational problem. Well, we both agree. Like, at some point, culture does matter. And having guys like Andrew Copp into your culture is a huge deal. So missing him for the rest of the season is gonna suck. Obviously, you got some leaders in the locker room still, like JT Compher and Patrick Kane and Larkin and all that jazz. But losing a guy like Copp, who has been one of your best goal scorers, top 5, I think he's 5th overall. It's not a good situation to be in. And obviously, you could talk about it all you want about what he does and who you want to trade for and all that stuff. But you know, like Cindy said, if you lose another player, like we're talking about, you're calling a rookie up, and then you got to expect this rookie player from Grand Rapids to gel right into this Red Wings team that's on a playoff chase. And we're gonna get down to the nitty gritty of the playoff chase. And this is like you're basically throwing a toddler into a swimming pool and tell him to swim a lap. Like, it's like it doesn't make any sense. So people just they think that you can bring up Nate Danielson and be fine, and you think you can bring up this guy and be fine, but it doesn't work that way. It's not like the NHL 25 where you just bring up a guy and you're all right, but you're not where you were, but you're still playing all right. Sometimes it could be a huge drop off. You don't even know. So that's
Well,
what's going on.
for sure. And that's the thing, is that one of the things that I wanted to emphasize is the fact that replacing Cop is not simple. It's not going to be an easy thing. I mean, you got to deal with it, of course. Like you mentioned, all the Lions injuries that had to be dealt with, and they did the best that they could. But um, the only like silver lining I really see here in terms of that injury is the fact I'm glad it happened before the trade deadline rather than after, because at least now there might be some more options open that weren't open before, or Steve can make some adjustments now that he wouldn't be able to make after the trade deadline passes. But you're right, you can't bring up a kid who might be outstanding. And you know what, you see this with someone who is mentioned to be a complete generational talent. And I talked about this before, and I think you referenced this as well. Connor Bedard, arguably one of the best players, a generational talent. Absolutely. Tons of talent, but there's no replacement for experience. And he's got to gain that experience, because then what you find is that even Connor Bedard then is going to go through his struggles as he matures.
Yep.
Right. So you're going to have that. And the fact is that Andrew Copp has not only skill and ability that you pointed out, but also he's got that experience that none of these guys coming up out of Grand Rapids are going to have. I mean, even Dominic Shine, yeah, he's been in with the Red Wings a long time, and maybe that's somebody they would consider bringing up.
NHL experience is none.
Right. He doesn't have that much experience on NHL ice. It's a whole different ballgame. And I can tell you, and I know that anybody else who's a little long in the tooth like me, which you love to point out, right? Somebody who's been in a long time. Yeah.
AARP friend.
Yeah. You being in anything, any length of time, right? There's just certain things that you build up an institutional knowledge about, or your just base of knowledge, where when you're put in a situation and it's crunch time and you've got to make a decision, you don't have time to consult anybody. You don't have time. You have just got to do it. You automatically, subconsciously go back into that base of knowledge, or in these guys' cases, a lot of it's muscle memory. And they're just going to boom react within a split second, which they have to do on the ice. They don't have time to go back and ask the coach. They don't have time to go and consult with a veteran player. If they've got 3 or 4 seconds, maybe prior to a face-off something, maybe. But really, when they're in the middle of a play, they have to know what to do instinctively. And you just don't get that without the experience. And that's one of the things Andrew Copp has that somebody like a Nate Danielson wouldn't have, or one of these other guys. But boy, isn't that beautiful? Look at that. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, look at that graphic. Is that not a beautiful thing? That is a thing of beauty, Joe. I love it.
9-1-2 in their last 12, and you brought up Andrew Copp and you brought up the Connor Bedard example, and I think that's a perfect example. One of the things that I think anyone that watches Connor Bedard thinks he's a great player, right? I think me and you, we watch him, we go, okay, we like Frank Nazar a little bit better, but that's biases.
That's a personal bias, yeah.
But,
Frankie, Frankie. I'm so sorry. When he got drafted, I got to tell you, when Frankie Nazar got drafted, right? I said to his aunt, I said, I'm so excited for Frank. The only downside of this is he's in Chicago. But anyway, go ahead.
I think with Connor Bedard, he's such a wonderful player. One of the generational players. But you see what his problem is. He can't play defensive hockey, and sometimes he gets caught up in his own end. He makes a stupid play, like trying to pass it over to someone who's obviously covered, and he hasn't got the gist of it yet. So, when you talk about Andrew Copp being out, and then you talk about what if another guy goes down, and who do you bring up? Well, that's kind of the things that Stevie Y has to value, because he's watching these guys in Grand Rapids. He's seeing what they're doing, and he's critiquing them a little bit. You know what I'm saying? He's like, okay, I like Nate Danielson as a player. He's a first-round pick, all that jazz. He's a great player. But the reality of the situation is, can I trust him in a playoff chase? can I trust them in a playoff chase? So that's what it comes down to.
Absolutely. And the fact that, this playoff chase that we're in and where we're at in the standings is not by any stretch guaranteed. I mean, it is still tight, 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 and every single game is hugely consequential. I mean, this game that we've got coming up against Columbus tomorrow, I mean, is just massively impactful, right?
It's
For a
huge.
number
It's
of
huge.
reasons.
Yeah, it's huge.
Huge.
It's a huge game, and when you look at these standings, like I'm gonna pull it up in a minute, but when you look at these standings, like they are just they're so compact, and you're starting to gain some separation. So if you can gain some separation, I mean, you're not far behind the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are in third place in the Atlantic. So it'll be interesting to see what you could do here coming
Well,
up. So
that's the interesting thing about this division, Joe, is we don't have a Vegas Golden Knights, we don't have a Winnipeg Jets, we don't have any of these teams that are in the high 70s, low 80s in the points. We're so tight overall, and we've got Boston breathing down our necks, we've got Ottawa breathing down our necks, you got Columbus breathing down here. You've got multiple teams that are on your butt. And you have got to, as you said, get some separation, get some distance. And I mean, it's kind of like the Red Wings are in this spot right now almost on a bubble in my opinion, because of the tightness of it and the fact there's not a whole lot of games in hand anymore. Like you got one here or there, but we don't have games in hand on too many of these guys, these other players, or excuse me, these other teams. So we're kind of in a bubble situation where it could go either way. You're on the tipping point of the seesaw, right? Which way is it going to go? You can sink like a stone, or you might get, vaulted up into the top three. But you're going to need everything you've got to do it.
yeah, I just look at the way this division is right now with the Toronto Maple Leafs potentially playing you in the playoffs. How great would that be? Playing the Red Wings in the playoff first round would be the Red Wings and the Maple Leafs if the playoffs started today, but they don't. And I just look at the point percentages because that's a huge marker and how you're going to fare down the stretch. Like even if you go 500, I mean 569 is a pretty good point percentage, and that would put you in the playoffs compared to the other teams. Like if we go down a little bit, I mean the Ottawa Senators are 544. I mean there's no one really close to you in terms of you're almost 570. The closest to you is 552. So I'm not really worried about I'm not worried about the Red Wings have to play all these games and all that stuff. But I think the Red Wings have a really good shot to, make the playoffs. And I think obviously this series coming up with the Columbus Blue Jackets, where you got 2 games in a row against them. You got a home and home, and it's a great chance to build up a little bit of a cushion between you and the rest of them, because these are wins that they have 58 games and you have 58 games. So if you can get 4 points here, I mean that's a huge stepping stone for this team. It'd be tough for Columbus to overtake you unless you kind of fell off the screen. But I just, man, I look at this team, man, and the way they're playing, and I can't help but wonder, what Stevie Y is going to do at the trade deadline, because I feel like, I don't know if everyone feels like this, but I feel like Stevie Y, like you said, with the Andrew Copp injury, I feel like this is a very good shot for him to go make a move, because this team is good. Like they're not like falling apart. They're not, last year we were talking about this and I was telling you, like, look, I love this Red Wings team, but I just can't, I don't really get the gist of them. I really don't think that they're this amazing team. And by the end of March, they showed us exactly who they were.
Yeah.
Exactly who me and you were kind of, calm. We weren't calm in reservation, but we were like kind of like saying, look, there's parts of this game I don't enjoy. Falling behind like 4-0 to the San Jose Sharks, not a good sign. There's so many things that last year that made no sense to me, and I was just like, oh boy, there's things here. But Todd McLennan has changed it, and like obviously he comes over, and this team's starting to really take a step forward. And I think that with Andrew Copp going down, I think this kind of puts Yzerman in the mood to go make a move. Like go make a move.
I think he will. Let's put it this way. I believe that Steve looks at this team as something that is worth investing in this season. I don't think, I think in previous years he was more looking forward to the I mean, I think there was a glimmer of hope one of those years, when he made a trade, but I think it was more of he was looking to the next season. He was always looking to the next season and looking to the off season and saying, what can I do in the off season? And I think his interest was more there, but I think now he's cautiously optimistic. Probably, I think a sentiment a lot of us are cautiously optimistic right now. It's kind of like, this is great, but is it sustainable? Will they sustain it? And Todd McClellan basically said the same thing in a recent press conference. And he said, these next, I think he said, couple of weeks, that's going to show who we really are. We want to know who we are. We're going to find out. And, are we the team that can go the distance, or are we the team that is going to fall apart again? Who are we? And everybody's going to know, and we're going to find out ourselves. So I think, Todd McClellan even can admit to a certain extent that this team is still forming an identity. They're still gelling. He's kind of come into the game late, and he's done an outstanding job. And I'll tell you why I think it's been such a great result. It's that I think that these players were so starved for his type of leadership and his type of play and his approach. They were so desperate for a coaching change that they are just, it's showing now. They're really willing to put their best skate forward, if you will, now. So I think Steve Yzerman is too. I think he's willing to put his best foot forward and really look at exploring making some investment in some guys at the trade deadline. But I know he's not going to do anything. I think what he's going to do will have everything to do with what's going to best prepare them for a deep playoff run. I think Steve's looking that way, whether that means making a trade or whether that means, bringing some guys up from Grand Rapids. I think he has an awful lot of faith in Todd McClellan, and I think he's going to take a lot of cues from him.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and some of the teams that are, some of the players that are named to Detroit, like the Elias Pettersson. This is from David Pagnota. We went through it earlier, but there's people that are just joining. These are guys that Dave Pagnota is saying that they might be that are rumored to Detroit, which rumors are always something around this time of year. And then today, Sportsnet put out that Binnington could be the focus of the goalie market. But if you're going to go to St. Louis, I mean, Braden Schen's there, and you got a center that's out for the year. So it's very interesting from the Red Wings perspective because this is the first year that they could buy. They obviously got players in the prospect pool. They could do some things that they have a work cap space, $14 million after the Husso trade. So I mean, this is something that they can do. But it's just a matter of fact of what Yzerman thinks is a good deal and what's not going to hamper him into the future. And I don't see many deals that are going to hamper him in the future, unless you got an Elias Pettersson, who I don't think is anywhere close to coming to Detroit, just stylistically wise.
Yeah, I don't think he would be a good fit either. And that's going to be what Steve's going to look for first and foremost, is who's going to fit the culture, who's going to be on board with what they're doing. And that's going to be critical, and I think is going to be even more of a consideration than any type of talent or numbers that they might bring with them. Is going to be, do they fit the culture? And I think that's the right question to ask. Absolutely. I don't think that Steve is, I think he's changing his strategy a little bit. I would say that before, when he was looking at the trade market, I think the way he sees it now is different. I think what he's looking for is different, and maybe the Copp injury has something to do with that. But I think before he might have been looking to make a change in the decor. I don't think that's the case now. I think he's looking more into the forward group and looking to shore that up. Because I think he's got recognizes the same concerns that we brought to light here with that forward group, and making sure that they can continue to perform while who knows, maybe he will try to shore up the decor, but I'm guessing not. I would see him bringing Binnington on before making a change in his decor now, because I think he's got to address issues in the forward group. That's what I think he's going to do. What those are going to be, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what we
before
find out what he ended up doing.
before the Andrew Copp injury, there was people saying that they were going to trade for a defenseman,
Yeah.
and defensemen that were named was like Jake Evans from Montreal, who could be on the move because he's not going to sign a deal with them. Seth Jones is obviously a guy that's out there who he wants to go to a contender. So would he want to come here? He has a no trade clause. And then, there's a couple of defensemen that might be available, but is, like a guy like Eric Carlson, right? He's got a horrible cap hit, but do you get him on a cheap? Like something could happen in this week to go. Like we literally got a week till the trade deadline on the Friday. What is it, March 4th or something like that? No, it might be March 6th or something like that. But you got a long time before that. There's so many things that they're saying like, oh, the Red Wings can go after a defenseman. There's people that say that like they can go after Binnington like today. Like I that was the least time I expected someone to say the Red Wings were interested in Binnington. Because I know you're a fan of Jordan Binnington, Miss Cindy. And
well, I am. Here's my thought on why they might be looking at Binnington. I think Cam Talbot is not going to be able to play for too many more seasons. He's probably done after this contract's up. Lions got some life left, but I think Talbot's really coming into the sunset of his career. And I think, if Steve's looking long term, he may be looking to sign Jordan Binnington to a longer contract, maybe 5-year deal, to take Cam Talbot's place because you don't have Ville Husso anymore to rely on. So maybe that's what he's thinking.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Binnington would be. This was from today from Sportsnet. Binnington would be the focus of the goalie market. We shouldn't underestimate the interest level Edmonton, Carolina, and Detroit have in him. The interesting thing about that is when you look at the teams that were mentioned besides Detroit. I mean, these are teams that are up against the cap. So, how much can they really do? And it doesn't make it into Detroit's hands. So, the Binnington thing is crazy. I didn't expect that today. Obviously, we're going to talk the Andrew Copp thing. We talked about that. We talked about the trades that could be potentially coming. But I mean, I there's so much that could be said about this time of year in terms of the trade deadline and who could be going and where what do the Red Wings do in the meantime to try to shore up their team? You know what I'm saying? They got a week to go, and it's going to be interesting because the schedule that they have coming up is not. I wouldn't say it's hard, but you got a couple of hard games here. You got the Columbus Blue Jackets, and then before the trade deadline, you got a couple of hard games right here. God dang it, it went to the wrong one. But I'll pull it up right now. But you got the Stadium Series on Saturday. You got the Columbus on what is it, Thursday? I think it is.
Yeah, tomorrow. Yep.
So you got that's what it was all messed up anyway. So Saturday you got the Columbus Blue Jackets Stadium Series, and then you come home. You got a couple of days off Sunday and Monday. Tuesday you play the Carolina Hurricanes, who are a pretty damn good team. I think we all can imagine.
Yeah,
they're a tough team. And then you play Utah, who they could be a sneaky team, man. And we know that because they used to be the Phoenix or Arizona Coyotes. I mean, they changed names so many times, it's ridiculous. But and then on trade deadline day, you play the Capitals, and that's not going to be an easy game either. So, I mean, the Red Wings are up to the challenge, obviously, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this week period. And I want to point to the 2 days that they have off, Sunday and Monday. Those could be days that Steve Yzerman kind of makes them move. You know what I'm saying? Because if we get to Saturday, we get to Thursday and Friday, like they got games back to back, which is tough on the schedule. I don't know why the NHL set it up like this, but you got game at home and then you got to go game on the road. So on trade deadline day, you could have people going and coming, and that could be ridiculous too. And I think the Capitals could be the same way. I don't know why the NHL sets up a trade deadline with a couple games like this, but it is what it is.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what I'm looking for out of this trade deadline. If Steve makes a trade, whether it is for a D-man or whether it's for a forward, I think so. Let's take the goalies out of the equation for a minute. Let's just talk forwards and defensemen. Either way he goes, I think he would be well served to look for someone with physicality. And I'll tell you why. Because everybody knows that when you get into the playoffs and when you're playing for the cup, physicality wins every time. And so things get desperate, they get brutal, and you've got to have a guy who doesn't have any reservations about getting in there and mixing it up. And there's been a couple guys on the team right now, Rasmussen. There's a couple other guys, not afraid, Mo Sider's not afraid to mix it up. There's guys on the team that I would characterize as they're not afraid to fight. They're not afraid to get physical. They may have been asked because of their physical size or some other characteristic, have been asked to step into that role and be physical. But I don't see any grinders who are just naturally physical, that have that natural aptitude. Not like you need like a Darren McCarty. You need a guy like that who has a natural aptitude for physicality and can bring that to the game without being asked. It's just instinctual. And I think you need one of those guys. You need need a grinder in there. You need somebody who can fill that role. So when it gets tough, they're the first ones that are on it.
Well, Eric Miller brings up a good one, and I'll put it up here. How about Tyler Bertuzzi coming back if the deal is right? And I honestly, I'm not going to say this out of, everyone knows, I think, that's watched this podcast or, ain't far along. And I know he's going to the Stadium Series, so I hope you have fun, Eric. But if Tyler Bertuzzi could be had for the right deal, get his ass out of Chicago and bring him to Detroit. He's got 17 goals this year. He could chip in offensively. He's a grinder, kind of like what you were saying. And I think that Yzerman would kind of, when you get to the playoffs, I think you need guys like that. I think you need guys that are physical and that could score. And I look at Rasmussen, like you said, maybe he could be the guy, but he's, it's to be determined how good of a playoff player he is because he hasn't really experienced the playoffs. Austin Watson, who can come from the Grand Rapids Griffins. I mean, he's not someone that you're going to bring in here for the playoff push unless there is another injury. So why wouldn't you go after a Tyler Bertuzzi? Like, if the deal is right, if you can get Tyler Bertuzzi back for like a 4th round pick or a 5th round pick, would you throw it out there?
I thought about that because, to be honest with you, I've been keeping my eyes on the Blackhawks for a couple of reasons, as you know. I know Tyler, and I've been kind of following his career a little bit for various reasons, as he's been bouncing around and things like that. Obviously, Frank Nazara, have personal connection there, and also Connor Bedard I find intriguing, right? So I've been watching Chicago in general, just as they've been kind of going through this rebuild, or whatever they're trying to do. I'll tell you this. I think that's probably, I don't know if Tyler Bertuzzi would be the right fit back here now. I really don't. I don't know if he would fit in the current schematic the way it's set up. I don't know how he would fit with Kane. I don't know how he would fit with DeBrincat. I see those guys as kind of a whole nother level. And I think they're playing really well with these young, I don't want to say they're not rookies, but with these younger players, are matching well with those guys. But Bertuzzi is a veteran himself now. I'm not so sure he would fit. Aside from that, you're not going to get him because he's one of the only solid veterans Chicago has, because any veteran who can go somewhere else is going somewhere else.
Well,
nobody wants to be in Chicago.
If I believe correctly, Tyler Bertuzzi's on a I think is he on a multi-year deal or what? I mean,
he's on a multi-year deal with Chicago. I think it's a 5-year deal.
Is it really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they locked him in. They locked him in long term, and they gave him. Well, that's a whole other matter. But
they gave him 22. Okay, so the contract is $22 million.
Yeah.
It's a cap hit of 5.5. It's a 4-year contract, so he's got time.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's a no move clause in there or not, but that's kind of what it is. Yeah, he's got a modified no trade clause, so he can kind of
pick. Yeah. I mean, I think he would do. Here's what I think. I think if Detroit made an overture, so saying all that, I also believe just based on certain information, is that if an overture was made to Tyler Bertuzzi, I think he would absolutely come back to Detroit. I think he never wanted to leave in the first place. But the fact of the matter is it wasn't the circumstances in Detroit at the time that he left. He wasn't happy with. Would he be happy with them now? I think it's a case with Bertuzzi I think he thought the grass was going to be greener on the other side. And even though he had his moments with Boston, he had his moments, with Toronto, he's having his moments with Chicago. I don't think any of those places really feel or felt like home to him. I think he saw himself as a Red Wing. I think he would want to be back here. They've got a lot of ties to Michigan, just with the family and everything like that. So I think if we made an overture, I think Tyler would absolutely waive the no trade or his modified trade clause. Yeah. I think he would come to Detroit, but the terms would have to be right. And I'm not so sure Steve Yzerman would be willing to give him, even match the deal that he's got in Chicago. I don't think he would. And so I just don't. I think it's a non-starter, Joe. I think it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's kind of one I was throwing out there. And then Dylan threw out Brandon Tanev, and Tanev is on a $3.5 million contract. It's a 1-year contract. It expires after the end of this year. So it's a kind of a guy that you can go get who is a rental. That's basically where you can get some bargain guys. And he's Brandon Tanev is he's a total goon. And I don't say goon in a bad way. I mean, he could mix it up. He's a guy that, you were bringing up, a guy who is willing to drop the gloves, a guy who, is physical. He's not going to really be anything that you're going to be like, oh, he's a goal scorer. No, he's only scored 9 goals this year. He's got 17 points on the year. But he loves to play. He's good defensively. He's good on the penalty kill. He's good physicality, defensive zone. He has a high rating there. He's a good skater. He's a very smart hockey player. So if you're going to bring in a guy, that's someone that you would probably bring in, a Brandon Tanev or someone like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's exactly what you need. Maybe
that was a good one by Dylan, because
kudos, Dylan. Nice pick.
You hear all these people saying, "Oh, I want this guy," but we don't talk about these guys that like a Brandon Tanev. Like there's so many guys, like a Ryan Donato from Chicago is another one that you could potentially go get. Those are guys that you can go get, and I think what you were talking about earlier with Andrew Kopp and how him being injured kind of opens the door for Yzerman to make a move. And because he can make a move, I mean, you're basically ensuring that, if someone else gets hurt, you can bring in a guy like Brandon Tanev or Ryan Donato to help you out.
And that's the other thing that Steve's going to have to make a decision about is he going to look for a rental, or is he going to look for a more permanent solution, or, a more permanent fixture? Because remember, he's still got the Tarasenko issue out there. That hasn't gone away. Okay. So now you've got to say, okay, do you end up with Tarasenko as part of some sort of a trade deal? Maybe a 3-team trade or something on that order, to kind of make everybody happy, so it's a win-win for everybody. And we know Steve Yzerman, he's not going to lose on that deal. Now, one of the things, Steve's a lot like Trump that way. Like, he ain't losing, right? And so he's not going to lose on this deal. He's not going to overpay, and he's going to make sure that the Red Wings are in the best position they can be, but he's not going to give it away, and he's not going to overpay. So, I think that the Tarasenko situation has to be taken into consideration, along with the Kopp injury, along with the possibility of perhaps bringing in a long-term successor to Cam Talbot, and possibly in Jordan Binnington, or possibly just taking on a rental to see how far it goes. There's a number of different avenues that Steve might choose to go with. And it's going to be I think who he brings in, Joe, is going to have a lot to do with the strategy he's employing in that regard.
Yeah, and I look at this trade list from David Pagnotta, and he's Jake Evans is a center too, and that's someone that Detroit was mentioned with for a little bit. He's a 28-year-old guy. I think if anything that we know about Yzerman, he's not going to make a trade that's going to hamper him for the future. And with the cap going up, like it's expected to go up. I mean, you got Raymond on a good deal, Larkin on a good deal, Cider on a good deal. Those will be great deals coming up, in the future. And I look at a team like the Edmonton Oilers who are potentially interested in, if we go back to what we were talking about with the Bennington thing, they're interested in Bennington, and I just don't understand how they really put that together because I mean they're not in a cap situation where they can get keep throwing money at the wall kind of thing.
Yeah, and I have to be honest, I really had not heard Bennington's name mentioned at all until the last like 24, 48 hours. So that isn't a name that I had heard thrown around to come here or is even part of the conversation that
Yeah.
the Wings are having. So but it was fun to explore it just because A, I'm a Bennington fan. B, just kind of speculating in terms of, all right, well, where is this coming from and what might be the strategy? It's kind of, where's Waldo? Where's Stevie at? Right. I mean, let's try to find him, in the mess of this, as you called it, wild west of the trade market right now. And it's going to continue to be that way until this is kind of settled and over. And I think the other thing that, and I think Chris Osgood and I think Larry Murphy both alluded to this, is that you haven't seen, or they hadn't seen, this kind of the closeness, how tight this division is. They hadn't seen this in a long time. They've seen it, and they know that when it happens, it makes for A, very exciting hockey, which is great for all of us, but B, you just, because of the way that the stats are rolling out here, is every single game is pivotal. Every decision you make has huge implications.
Oh yeah.
So you're going to have to really, Steve is going to have to be very surgical in his approach to this. I don't think you can just hatchet this thing. You're going to have to be very surgical in your approach. And I think it may come down to like almost a last minute decision on what he decides to do based on, the changing circumstances at the time. Like I said, we just talked about it. You got several critical games between now and the trade deadline. That could change everything depending on what happens.
Everything. And you look at the injury of Copp, that's something that's really going to weigh on Yzerman's mind as we get to the trade deadline. And you said it right. This is a good time for it to happen because now it gives Steve Yzerman the chance to go out in there and scout someone, that's kind of what people are, thinking. And I mean, this gives them an opportunity to go scout guys like I'm looking at some guys like Pajot from the New York Islanders, or Ryan Donato, or even a guy like Scott Lofton from the Philadelphia Flyers, or Trent Frederick. Like those are guys that could potentially be someone that he could target. And I look at it like this. We've talked about it all throughout this whole thing because the trade deadline is coming up next Friday, and we'll probably have another podcast before then because I mean we look at the schedule and there's really a couple opportunities to have a good podcast because we don't like to have them on game days. But you look at they got 3 days off next week. 3 between Sunday and Friday. They got 3. So
yeah,
that Wednesday is a day that they can make trades because they're in a back-to-back that Utah and Washington game. So it's gonna be interesting what happens coming down the line because I have a feeling, Cindy, we're gonna get off this podcast today. We're gonna post it up on the podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And next thing you know, there's gonna be a trade from someone, and it's gonna spawn every GM to make a trade. That's usually what happens around this time. And that's I think the NHL told them to hold off on trades till after the Four Nations tournament. I think that was the case. So I think Friday or Saturday things are gonna start to pop off, in my opinion.
Probably so. I mean, and that's always the way it is. There's all kinds of speculation and conversations happening, and then boom, then it all happens at once because it's all kind of happening in the background, and then everybody sees it at one time, right?
And we know Yzerman is a guy who works in silence. So, a lot of things you hear about trades that could potentially happen with the Red Wings involved, I mean, I don't really count them as something that I'm really, think it's going to be a foregone conclusion. But I do think that, Eiserman is going around and trying to figure out where he can get the most value for this team, because I think he knows this team is really good. And we showed you the schedule. Everyone that's on the podcast, we showed you the schedule of God, my light just went out. We showed you the schedule of this team, and we look into March, and I mean, like, look, after the trade deadline, you got Ottawa, who I don't think Ottawa is some great team. You got Buffalo, who's struggling. Carolina, again, that's on the road. You got the Vegas Golden Knights twice, because I know you play them on the road. Yeah, they play on the road that Saturday. They play Washington. They play Colorado. They have a couple tough games, but this is a good schedule for you to kind of get a chance to move forward. And I think this is a good chance for the Red Wings to do that.
Oh, absolutely. They can make up a considerable amount of ground here, just as they have been. They can stack up some more wins here, and as you said earlier, Joe, put some distance. They've got to start stretching this out. They've got to start creating some space, and I think they have an opportunity to do that. And I would like to see them solidly in the top 3. I think that's very doable, based on how the schedule is set up here, not only for the Red Wings, but for Toronto and for the Florida Panthers. I think the Florida Panthers are a little bit vulnerable right now. I mean, they're one injury away from, stinking like a stone. And so, you've got,
if Tkachuk is out, what does that do for the Panthers? Because there's people that are saying that, we don't know how severe his groin injury is, but if Matthew Tkachuk is out, that's a huge loss. Like, that is a huge loss. It'd be like the Red Wings losing Larkin or DeBrincat or Seider or someone like that. That's a huge loss. So, we're getting down to the part of the season, Cindy, where we're getting down to that part of the season where things are going to start to just change. Like, teams are going to drop off like flies, and then there's going to be teams that fly up, like that come up on the high. And I think the Red Wings are in a good spot right now. But you look at the teams behind them. I tell you what, the Senators really don't give me anyone. I'm not the Senators. I'm like, okay, the Senators. The Rangers are a team I think we should be weary of, because they still have really good players, and that trade of JT Miller was pretty good from them. Boston seems to be tanking like a fly. There's actually rumors of them they might trade Marchand, which is just, I don't know where that comes from. But
I told you that was going to happen with Boston. Because there were a lot of telltale signs of that, and sure enough, they're dropping like stones. So that's good. So some of these, but like you said, there's some of these guys they've just got to put some distance up there. I'd like to see them get in the top 3, and I'll be more comfortable with that. But I know we wanted to talk about Four Nations real quick. I know we got a couple minutes left, and I didn't know if you wanted to kind of go over. I mean, the bottom line was I wasn't. Let me tell you my quick. It'll take 30 seconds. Was not necessarily a fan of the Four Nations. I missed the All-Star. I wanted the All-Star game, and I'll tell you what, I didn't get an All-Star game. I got an All-Star series. That was a fantastic.
You said you didn't like it, though.
Enjoyed it. What's that?
You said you didn't like it, though.
No, I didn't. I didn't think I was gonna like it until it happened.
Yeah, because we were talking about before the Four Nations
tournament.
Yeah,
I didn't want it.
Yeah, we were kind of like, the All-Star game is pretty cool. Sometimes it can be pretty cool. But I gotta tell you, though, let you get back to your point. But that Four Nations stuff, I was shocked at how good it was.
Yes. I mean, the best on best. You're supposed to have that in the All-Star game anyway, right? You've got all your best players. But here's the element that I found in the Four Nations tournament that I don't think that I really enjoyed, and it was refreshing and new, that you don't see in the All-Star game. I think the All-Star game might have been starting to get a little tired, kind of a little formulaic, kind of a little, it just, the Four Nations tournament was organic. I mean, those guys were playing for real. You know what I mean? They weren't there for the money.
Like playoff hockey. It really did.
Yeah, it was cool.
And I thought it was good for the game too, because when you talk about, hockey, getting the hockey on ESPN and being, out there, and it was the only game, it was the NBA All-Star game, and it was college basketball and the Four Nations tournament. And I thought the Four Nations tournament put such a good spotlight on the game of hockey, especially in the United States, where like people might, they might tune in to go, hockey game. Like maybe they're from Boston or they're from Dallas, and they're like, oh shoot, I got the Dallas Stars here. Luka just got traded from the Mavericks. I can go I can go watch a real winning team. And it's like it's great for these teams because I mean, hockey's such a great game. We know that hockey is a great game. It's you're writing a book about it for God's sakes. And
Right.
it tells you how good it is. But I
Yeah.
think hockey in the United States, it's kind of been a sleeping giant, to be honest. I mean, when you look at basketball and the load management that they have in basketball, hockey, I mean, there's no load management. There's no player taking a day off because they're tired. Like
Well,
that just
and
doesn't happen.
it was funny because PK Subban addressed that, and I thought that his comments were genuine, and I thought that they were very insightful. And he talked about, and you kind of Google his comments, and I just found them to be really good. But one of the things that he said was that these guys are out there playing for their country and it's real, and that the Four Nations tournament, the league set it up, but the players is what drove the success of the Four Nations tournament, and the players are what drove what we saw. The display we saw was totally player driven, and that made it real and organic in an environment where so many people speculate about things being fixed and players are overpaid and they're just a bunch of millionaires out there and they're doing it for the money. No, these guys, what you saw was a display of the most exceptional talent in ice hockey in the world on display, the real deal. It's kind of like one of those things like nobody let anybody win that, and nobody tanked it. And nobody was doing it for any other reason other than the love of the game
and their country.
And their country. And that was a beautiful thing, and I'm a big fan now.
I think the Four Nations tournament can be tweaked too. Like I think you can add a Russia in there, even though the International Olympics Committee doesn't want to add Russia to the Olympics, which whatever. But
you know what? I think Russia's status, to be honest, I mean, and as you know, I mean, that's my field, but the global politics are changing. The geopolitics involving Russia are changing literally as we speak right now. And I think you're going to find that once this thing with Ukraine is over with, and once there's stability over there, you might see Russia included. I think their posture is going to change, and I think they're going to start to be included in some of these things. Just my guess.
Just because Russia got a bunch of good players in the NHL, like what I love to see Kucherov and Bobrovsky and some of those guys play. Sergachev.
No doubt.
Hell yeah, I would. I mean, it's just the reality. Like Panarin for the Russians too. Like there's things that can be tweaked. Poor Finland, I felt bad for them. They were on a totally different level. They had a couple players that couldn't come to the Four Nations tournament, like Ristolainen, and there's a couple other players that couldn't come to the Four. Was it Miro Heiskanen, the kid from Dallas, who's got that knee injury? And that would have been a huge help. But they're coming here and there. It's basically like they played pretty good too for being as injured, and they didn't have their top guys. And it was Mikko Rantanen was a total dud in that tournament too.
Finland had it rough, man. Finland had it rough. You know what it reminded me of? I got to tell you. And for those people who are my age, and maybe Joe, you might even have seen this because it's a classic. Did you ever see that movie Multiplicity with Michael Keaton?
No.
Do you know who Michael Keaton is, you young punk you?
I think so, yeah.
All right. Okay. Mr. Mom, a Batman.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Now you're starting to gel.
He plays in this movie Multiplicity, and it's all basically about cloning him as a guy who's like overworked and all these the wives, the families needing him. Anyway, this scientist comes up with a way to clone him, and so they clone him. But the problem is they clone him 4 times, and they take like number 1 is number 2, or number 2 is number 1's clone, and 3 is second. And so they said it's like making a copy of a copy. Every time you get like more and more fuzzy, more and more not quite right, more and more things. So the 4th one in Multiplicity is like this very like challenged guy, and he's just a goofball, he like puts peanut butter all over his face and stuff. I mean, he's just not right. And I felt like poor Finland, man. They were like the number 4 in Multiplicity. They were just totally out. They were out leagued totally. I mean, they were not in there.
give them credit. I mean, they played they battled with they battled with Canada, they battled with Sweden, which is their rival. Like Canada's the United States rival in hockey. They battled, man,
like
but
the goofy
they just
sibling.
they couldn't get by because they didn't have the talent. So that sucked because you want to see it on an even playing field, and I would have loved to see the United States with Quinn Hughes. Like that would have been great because having no Quinn Hughes was that definitely tipped the scales in terms of especially when McAvoy got hurt for the U.S. It kind of limited what the United States can do because I mean Canada's Canada, man, and they have a great team. McDavid and McKinnon and Bennington and all those guys, like just a fantastic team. But it comes down to like one or two plays, and we saw it with that. And you know what was funny? The funniest part about that is that game against the U.S. and Canada ended in the most Canadian way ever. You want to know why? You want to know why?
Sure.
The guy who lost coverage of Connor McDavid, who people are going to know, but the guy who passed to Connor McDavid was a Toronto Maple Leaf. A guy who missed the coverage on Connor McDavid was a Toronto Maple Leaf.
So you're building a conspiracy theory now.
No, I'm saying this is a Toronto Maple Leaf way. Like they lost it in the most Toronto way ever. And I was like, come on, Austin Matthews, you got to be a lot better than that. You're leaving the best player in the world wide open in the slot. Like, I know you never played hockey, Cindy, but when you leave a person in the slot wide open, I don't care if it's your mom. Like your mom, I know your mom is, she can't walk as good as she used to.
Yeah, but she's tough, man. She'll come after you. I'd put my mom on the ice. I would. In a walker. She's gonna. She'll kick some ass.
You put your mom out there. You put Jeff out there. You put any of your kids out there. They're probably gonna hit it at the net. When you put Connor McDavid in the middle of the slot, what do you think he's gonna do? What do you really think he's gonna do? He's gonna score. Like that's what he does. He's Connor McDavid. He's the best player in the world, and it's like watching Austin Matthews do what he did in that game, in that overtime, was like, this is why the Leafs are the Leafs. This is why they lose in the playoffs. Like this guy is the captain of that team, and he just lets a guy like Connor McDavid be wide open. This is why you are the Toronto Maple Leafs. That is exactly why. So take your Four Nations tournament. You got that. If you're a Maple Leaf fan, your player blew the coverage. So
it explains everything. It does, Joe.
It explains everything. So
wise as always, you are.
It was so funny just to look at that and go, oh my God, it was a Maple Leaf that blew the coverage. Like I couldn't have made it up even more. Like as a total Toronto Maple Leaf hater, like I'm not a big Toronto Maple Leaf fan. I think their fans are kind of wild and rambunctious, and they're annoying, to be honest. But because you haven't won nothing, so shut up. But they think they invented the game of hockey. Them in Montreal. Montreal's another team that really irks me. It's not because, I mean, the whole French thing, the Quebec thing.
Well, let's say that, they came from Quebec. So they used to be, they got that Quebec thing going on.
Yeah, I mean, Quebec is another, is another segment of the world that you're like, oh, I mean, that's basically France. But it's just like, it's funny, like Montreal, Toronto, I don't know what it is about them. Like being in the Atlantic Division with them, those two, I just can't stand them. And Ottawa's becoming that way, but that's because of Brady Tkachuk. And I love Brady Tkachuk. And I thought earlier when you were talking about trading for Brady Tkachuk, because the little rumors that came out that the Senators should trade Tkachuk while they have the value as high, I was like, well, that'd be stupid. But if that's the case, I'll go for it. I mean, Tkachuk is a hell of a player, and I feel bad for him that he's stuck in Ottawa. Like that sucks, because Brady's a damn good player, and he's a total hellraiser, man. Like he getting in fights, using the body, like that's a hockey player. You could tell that his dad taught him well, Keith Tkachuk, because both of those kids, man, they love to hit, they love to score, and they love to play the game of hockey the right way. And I think that's just the way you put it. Like I know a lot of Red Wing fans don't like the Tkachuks, like because like they're kind of a pain in the ass because we play against them all the time. But bet your ass, if you can get them on your team, you would take them in a effing heartbeat, because they are such great players, man. And I'm just like, I'm glad they're Americans, because we got them going into the Olympics next year. Like I can't wait for that because we're gonna get our revenge on Canada. You know, the 51st state. Just kidding, guys.
Don't tell Governor Trudeau that.
Well, I pissed off a bunch of Canadians on Twitter. I said, "Oh, you know, I mean, we're looking over at the 51st state right now," and I was in Detroit, and they got all mad, they got all pissed off, and I was just joking around. But I think it was funny as hell because, like, look, I think the United States and Canada have a healthy rivalry in hockey. Obviously, the Canadians can't touch us in anything else, but they do have the best basketball player in the world right now, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So they got that going for them. But it was the Four Nations tournament was fantastic, and I loved every minute of it. And I gotta tell you, Cindy, I hope that they redo it again in a couple after the Olympics next year, and they make it better. Like, you just make it better. And I hope Detroit gets a part of that too.
A shot
Like,
at that, yeah. I think that's something they're going to have to work out is bringing it to a greater number of people. I mean, because they really were all the way on, you know, the yeah, they just got. I think there may be some other cities that they should maybe rotate it or something. But yeah,
well, I think Detroit would be great because the Red Wings facility ranked number 1 in the NHL and for opposing teams. So, you know, the opposing players love coming to Detroit, and I mean, it's a great arena, and everyone that you talk to says this arena is like fantastic to play in and all that jazz. And it's like, bring it to Detroit. You know, I know Boston's a good, you know, they got a good tradition around there, but let's do Toronto and Detroit next time. That's what we should do.
I would be in favor of that. Unfortunately, you know what I think they're going to do? I think the strategy is they kind of had it in the East. I'm willing to bet you next year you're going to find it in the West, maybe LA and Las Vegas. Well, they'll want a Canadian city, so it might be like Vancouver and Seattle or something like that. I'm thinking they're going to go West next time. That's just my guess, but you know, I love Vegas, so I would love for it to be in Las Vegas, and it's warm here. You know,
you are in Vegas right now.
I
would have gone in the middle of March, but you know, who's saying?
Hey, it's beautiful, 80 degrees and sunny. I'll take it.
Well, you're missing it because it's a little bit rainy. It's a little bit 40 degrees, so have fun. It's good weather over here in Michigan right now.
Well, I'll be having to look at it in a couple of days, so I will be happy to see you then.
Hopefully it doesn't change for the worse. Like, start snowing. If it starts snowing, we can blame you. Everyone that's listening to this podcast right now, if it starts snowing Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, it's all on Cindy. That's literally what she can say. And if it's a snowstorm, F it. We're not calling it a snowstorm. We're calling it a Cindy storm because she did it. She did it. Because she leaves and it suddenly turns 50 degrees and she comes back and it starts snowing. We'll know exactly who it is. We will know. It's like when Austin Matthews blew the coverage to Connor McDavid. We know exactly who you are.
Hey, look, I just hope that my plane lands right side up. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, you know what? That's something, man. All these near misses on. We had another one in Chicago yesterday where the guy almost
crazy.
I don't know what's going on with these planes, but they need to figure it the F out because we got to get you home in one safe piece, and hopefully we don't get you upside down on a tarmac. That's not good.
That's right. That's not good. So see, I'm cool with it so long as the plane lands right side up and safely. Then I don't care what the weather is. I'll live with that. But hey, it's been a great podcast, Joe. I've loved joining you here from the Western Command, and
it's for people that don't know. We got 50 people listening right now. For people that don't know, Cindy is a very she's sporadic. One day she's in like Florida, one day she's in Vegas, one day she's back home in Michigan. We can never get a real good track of her, but when she comes on the podcast, we have fun and we talk Red Wings hockey. And obviously next Wednesday we will talk Red Wings hockey here on the Red Alert podcast too, because trade deadline is going to be that day. Going to be that Friday, so we're going to be able to talk about that, and I'm sure we could throw something together and try to figure out what, maybe Saturday we'll do a podcast or so people can get whatever. But it's been fun to talk hockey with you, and we had that 2-week hiatus because of the Four Nations tournament because I was busy doing stuff and I was buying a house, and then you were busy doing stuff, and you're trying to finish this book, and I hope you finish it.
I hope, you know what, it is. And God bless my producer. She this book is being made into a film. Everybody, I tell you, the 50 people that are listening, I'm telling you, it is going to be, this is the book and movie hockey fans have been waiting for, and I'm trying to get it in front of you and in your hands as soon as possible. You are going to absolutely love it. A ton of NHL guys who are going to be blurbing it, and that just love it too. And it's going to be great. This is going to be the best thing since probably Slapshot.
Oh my God. We'll see. Cindy's putting up high stakes right now. She's in Vegas. She's playing the high stakes club right now. I swear to God. Yeah, just don't lose any more money. Okay. That's the way it goes.
No, it's all about making deals, my friend. All about making deals and making things happen. So let's go Red Wings. I'm telling you, I'm holding out that game tomorrow. I'll still be out here on the in the West, in the desert here, but I am going to be tuning into that game against Ottawa because that is huge.
Columbus. We're playing Columbus.
Or Columbus. Excuse me.
I think I messed
Ottawa's up. Playing today.
Yeah, we messed up. We were going through a schedule and we were going, oh, that. I messed up too. I said they were playing Carolina, so we're all good. We're good.
Columbus.
We got the home and home with Columbus, and Saturday's a stadium series, so that'll be fun. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. If you guys want to go to the podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, we'll see you in the next show as we talk more Red Wings hockey. I'll have more YouTube content coming out. I'll put that up. I'll put that up on the page and on Twitter, so you guys can look at that. And then
and Joe, I want everybody to know I am going to tap all of my sources on trade rumors. So we will have a rumors segment for the next podcast.
Oh, even better. All right, guys, we'll see you guys in the next podcast. Talk more about hockey. We went a pretty good long. We went an hour and 15 minutes,
That's because I missed you.
It was a good, I missed you too. We had a lot to talk about, and we did it, and we talked about the Four Nations and the trades and how the Red Wings are playing and the Cop injury. It was all fun today. So we'll see you guys in the next podcast. We talk more Red Wings hockey here on the Red Alert Podcast.
See you then.